All right, we've got our next panel set up here, and I'll do some introductions from audience right to left. So I'll start with our moderator on the right, Sharon Bradish, is the Loretta Rogers Research Chair in Sports Marketing at Ryerson. She did a PhD in Sports Management at Florida State and previously was on the faculty at Brock. Kate Cimini, yes, is a freelance journalist who covers women's hockey for the past 2 years. Her work has appeared at Vice Sports, Sports Illustrated Online, and Yahoo Sports, among others, and she's the lead women's hockey writer at FanRag Sports. Brittany Smith has just completed her 3rd season as assistant coach for the reigning NCAA Division I champion Clarkson University Golden Knights. Those of you who don't know, so St. Lawrence and Clarkson are big rivals, being about 10 miles apart. So we'll try to separate the two at this end of the table. But we do congratulate the Golden Knights on their championship. Smith has also served as an assistant coach at the University of Toronto and for Teams Canada's under-18 team at the 2016 IIHF Ice Hockey Women's World Championships, where they captured a silver medal. As a player, Brittany was an all-star defenseman for St. Lawrence and was named a top 10 finalist for the 2010 Patty Kazmaier Memorial Award. Additionally, Brittany scored one of the biggest goals in the CWHL history as she tallied the only score in the 2014 Clarkson Cup Championship to lift the Toronto Flurries to a 1-0 victory, and she scored that 33 seconds into overtime. And finally, my good friend Chris Wells, who's the head coach of the Division I women's hockey team at St. Lawrence in Canton, where he's led the Skating Saints, creative nickname that we have, since the 2008-2009 season. He's a 1992 graduate of St. Lawrence in economics and was one of the heroes of the 1992 ECAC championship team. Maybe he'll tell you that story. He scored the overtime game winner in a come-from-behind semifinal win over RPI. Wells began his collegiate coaching career as an assistant at Colgate, following a European professional career. In 2012, Chris was named the 2012 AHCA National Coach of the Year. So I'll turn it over to Sharon.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. So thank you for the opportunity. A bit of my background for some of you who weren't at the workshop last night. One of my areas of responsibility at Ryerson falls under innovation and technology in sport and working with some of the startups. And a bit of a shameless plug, which leads to this panel. One of the projects we're working on right now is around supporting a program for female sport tech entrepreneurs. There are far too few or enough women at the front of the table in these conversations, so if that's something that interests you, follow up with me later, and we're going to do a symposium in the fall with some other institutions throughout North America at Ryerson. So that's okay. That paid for my plane ticket, so thank you. So thank you for doing this panel. I think we'll stick, unless you let us know otherwise, to about a 15, 20-minute conversation and then 10 minutes for Q&A. If you can't hear me or any of us, just put up your hands. Nice to meet you all. And I'm going to go into a couple of general questions about analytics and how it fits in with you, and then we have some specific questions for each of the panelists, if that works. So I really just want to ask each of you, and thank you for the kind introduction to each, how and why at this stage have you incorporated sport analytics into your work? And each of you is going to answer it a little bit differently. And even if you want to answer from a 50,000 feet view, when for you was the light bulb moment that sport and analytics was something that got you personally motivated and engaged? I'll just remind you all, I'm Kate. Nice to meet you. Sorry.
So, light bulb moment. I've only been covering women's sports for the past 2 years. Before that, I was covering the NHL, and I guess anybody here follow Jen Lou Costello on Twitter? I see a couple of hands up there. A few people are very excited. She started posting. Actually, I think it may have been her first blog post in like 2014 or something, maybe late 2013, and it kind of blew up on Twitter, and I read it, and I was like, this is fascinating, because I'm not a math person. I've never been a math person. The last math class I took was maybe my junior year of high school. So that I could read something and actually apply math to something that I thought was really cool, which was hockey, really fascinated me. And so I started kind of getting into the advanced analytics, as it was still called, fancy stats, which is still my favorite name for it. And started incorporating it in my writing. When I ended up making the jump to women's sports, there really weren't. And then for a little while there were some advanced analytics, and now there still kind of aren't, because we lost Trevor Wilkie, who was for a while doing the NWHL's advanced analytics. If the CWHL has advanced analytics, they're probably hiding them. I don't know, maybe Brittany, you can answer that. Did you guys get to see any of those while you were playing? No, I played them. So overall, I like to look at analytics and kind of see how they inform play, who's going to be the next breakout player, who's actually having a great year, even if they're not scoring a lot of goals. Best we get right now is a lot of plus minus. Shot attempts, but we don't even get some basic things like time on ice when you're looking at women's hockey. And that in particular is really frustrating, because then, I don't know if a certain player didn't do what she was supposed to do the game before, and now her coach is punishing her by taking away some time, and I have to hear about it a month later from a source who's like, hey, wait, so-and-so was, they're cutting her time. I had no clue. So yeah, that's it.
Brittany?
I think, when I took the job at Clarkson, I was pretty much told that one of my roles was analytics, so that's when I knew that was something I was going to get into. And in my first year, we didn't have any type of database or anything we were using, so it was kind of the startup then. So it was a lot of working, with our previous year's data and figuring out what was going to be important to us. We break down every game throughout the season, and we look at a number of different things, but over the 3 years, our stats have definitely evolved, and I think it's a slippery slope between, finding the right amount of information, one, for the time we have, being that we're also full-time coaches, and then also being for how much you are going to let trickle down into what your athletes get. So the kind of things we have focused on in the last, mostly the last 2 years, chances for and against, and what systems those are coming from within our game. And then individual stats, we do time on ice, chances for and against, blocks, shots, turnovers, and takeaways. Those are kind of things we focus on each season.
Chris?
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the light bulb moments for me, I got a couple of people I worked with extensively here in the audience, Dr. Robin Locke from St. Lawrence, and of course Dr. Shuckers here. Light bulb moment for probably a lot of us is when the book came out, Moneyball, and I was still recruiting for the men's team at St. Lawrence, and we tried to incorporate that as much into our recruiting as possible, not really salary cap stuff, but in terms of handing out scholarship money, trying to gauge what kind of stats kids had in each league, whether it was the Ontario Provincial League, whether it was the USHL League, and if they were able to reach a certain threshold of points, how did that translate to what they could do at college? And one of the great beneficiaries of that was Bob McKenzie's son, Mike, who ended up coming to St. Lawrence, and has been a big part of St. Lawrence, so we joke about it all the time. That Mike was there because the only reason he ended up at St. Lawrence was because of analytics, but he scored a lot of goals. He was able to get up SMT. He was, as they say in Quebec, he was always upstairs with the puck, and that's why I went in. So that was one of the things, and as an assistant coach, you try to put a lot of things on your head coach's plate. Things that we've been able to use a lot at St. Lawrence. We did a couple of projects. One of the projects just as recently, you got some of the students in the crowd here. Over the first part of the season, we cut down all the shots that we took on net. To SMT's point, I think you can see a little bit of difference as to where analytics is right now in women's hockey to where it is to the NHL. There's quite a big gap. We didn't quite have the angles of the puck shot, but we broke down a number of games, and the students that recorded that. We did lower third, middle third, and upper third, which was knee below, knee to chest, and then the upper part of the net. And then we put quadrants on the ice and tried to track whether it was a rebound, goalie saved, goal, goalie deflect out of play, stoppage of play, those type of things, just to try to get, any sort of data that could help us in terms of shooting, whether it was power play, 5-on-5, and then obviously if we could have progressed and had the resources, whether it would have been in transition, whether it was off offensive zone rotation, those type of things. And then one of the things that we did last year, Dr. Shuckers had a class, a statistics class, and we're fortunate to have two of his students come and do a project for us. And we focused on our penalty killing and especially the clears and the puck success that we had when we touched the puck. Did the puck get out? Did we make a good play? Did we turn it over? And then what type of things happened there? We found it to be very useful. A couple of things happened over that time. I believe the first half of the season, our penalty kill percentage was roughly around 79% up until Christmas. From Christmas on, our penalty kill percent went to 90%. Now, there's a couple of different things. We did make a couple of adjustments. I certainly got to give credit to someone sitting up in the crowd. Our goalie is also in the crowd here, too. Grace Harrison's here. Grace didn't play a lot of games the first half of the season. She did get in the second half of the season, and I think some of that uptick, too, was to her increased save percentage that our team had.
Perfect. Where's Grace? They all know who you are.
Grace is from New Zealand as well. So it's not a hockey hotbed. Unfortunately, our recruiter didn't get to go to New Zealand to see her play. He had to go to Cornwall.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm going to ask each of you a couple specific questions also in light of wanting to leave some time for the audience. So for Kate, perhaps you can talk about how you have weaved analytics and sport analytics as a narrative into your writing, supporting the work that you're doing from the media perspective.
Absolutely. So Carolyn Mulvey, who I mentioned earlier, is my site manager / editor at FanRag. So anytime I propose an article to her that has the word stats in it, she's just automatically, she's like, yes, absolutely, do that one. I don't care what it is. We've managed to, even though she's not doing any, advanced statistics throughout the season with regards at least to the NWHL. We've managed to kind of scrape together enough data, and the NWHL has been doing some interesting stuff with its basic data. Like it's looking at turnovers, it's looking at shot attempts, and I'm trying to remember what it was the shots for. I believe it does, yes. But so it goes a little bit beyond just goals, assists, plus minus, etc. And Carolyn also makes sure, I must mention this, every time we mention plus minus in an article, we have to put a paragraph stating that it is a very rough statistic and should not really be counted. But sometimes you gotta look way high. So we frequently, at least at FanRag, use statistics and any kind of analytics we can kind of scrape in there, because again, there aren't many, to generally predict how a team is going to do, which can be tricky in a 22-game season. So we have to take those with a grain of salt as well. But I'm sure I need to mention that, so the advanced analytics we had last season that Carolyn put together for the NWHL, it did show very early on that the Boston Pride was absolutely going to dominate. And what was interesting, and which they did, they won the regular season and they won the Isabel Cup. What was interesting was that the Connecticut Whale, for example, there's only 4 teams in the NWHL. The Connecticut Whale was, for the longest time, up until the last 2 games of the season, was the leader in the regular season. And they kind of seemed untouchable. And then at the end, we kind of got this narrative of, oh, it's Connecticut versus Boston, and both of them, you know, they looked phenomenal, but we couldn't quite, Connecticut was a little weird. You looked at them, you couldn't quite figure out what was happening. You couldn't quite see a system, you couldn't quite, like, I looked at them and I was like, what's going on? Like, am I stupid? Like, what am I missing? And it turned out that their PDO was super duper high. They had just amazing luck throughout the first, I think they had 18 games this year. They had amazing luck, and they also had very easy matchups through the first 10 games of the season. So they started off undefeated, and then they really kind of started grinding. They changed coaches, and things started to fall apart for them slowly. So honestly, how do I incorporate analytics? I try to incorporate them all the time. It doesn't always make it into my article in a mention. But if I'm writing about a player, I'm spending a lot of time looking at how she's playing. I'm spending a lot of time looking at how her opponents are playing against her. So, 100%.
This is a question for both Brittany and Chris, so you can take it, whoever wants to go first. So you really reviewed, so to speak, how you use your analytics in your coaching, but one of the follow-ups to that is how you find it effective. And you may also want to address a little bit more specifically if you use it in your recruiting as well. So, either one.
Yeah, we don't use it in our recruiting, so I can answer that pretty quickly. Interesting though that, you know, listening to Chris, that might be something we look into, but as of now, we're not. And in terms of what we have found effective, I think I kind of touched upon it already. We've done many different things over the last 3 years, and kind of what we've settled on from a team perspective and systems is chances for and chances against. Looking at, you know, by period, what periods are we getting more chances, and trying to find if there's a reason for that. Also looking at by system. So when we look at chances for, we'll break it down into whether it's in zone, whether it's off the rush, or whether it's special teams, and then from there there are subcategories as well that I won't get into, but we have about 8 different events that we look at for chances for and chances against. And then from that, you know, you can see, okay, we're giving most of our chances up in zone, and in zone they're coming on whatever, maybe defensive zone coverage, let's just say. So then from there we use a video system that we can pull all of our chances against from defensive zone coverage, and then we can look at those clips, you know, for the last however long that we've been kind of seeing these trends, and from there we'll either make changes within our system, personnel, whatever it may be. And in terms of how that then is related to the players, you know, most times we're not giving them the numbers or the actual stats, but we're letting them know this is why we're changing the system, and use our video in terms of telling them, you know, what the changes are going to be moving forward. And then in terms of individual stats, this is kind of where our players see the most from us. We do time on ice, so from that we do all their stats based on the 60 minutes of play, so that eliminates the variable of ice time, which is big when you have, you know, people on the fourth line maybe saying that they don't have as many shots because they don't get ice time. So this is a nice tool to have in order to make those conversations. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're first line, fourth line, this is the same conversation for everyone. So 2-3 times a year we'll give out each player, it's kind of like a report, and they get their shots, block shots, chances for, against, chances for, and chances for, against, involved, and chances for, involved. So they might not be the primary player, but if they're, you know, secondary or further along, they also get that chance for or chance against. This is where we can have pretty good conversations with individual players, with whether it's, you know, telling them why they are where they are in the lineup, or also for skill development, player development, looking at, you know, what are the finer pieces of your game that we need to continue to work on in order for you to be in a position you feel you should be. And then we also do, every player gets to see where they rank in each category among the same position. So for forwards it's 1 through 12, defense 1 through 6, And goalies, we unfortunately don't do a ton of statistics, so we have a goalie coach that kind of handles them, but they don't get anything from us.
Thanks. Do you want to add anything to that as well?
Yeah, I might just add the implementation piece of that. I mean, I think one of the things that Brett and I work through is our kids with all this stuff. We love to put all this stuff into place, but they're all 18 to 20-year-old college students, and amazing to see so many St. Lawrence students here on an early Saturday morning after Friday night. So you have to deal with their social life. You know, they're there to go to school and take care of their schooling, and then hockey obviously is what got them to places like St. Lawrence and Clarkson. They're probably not going to St. Lawrence and Clarkson unless we've recruited them to come and play hockey. So I think a lot of the implementation of the things that we do just come into practice because the amount of time that you get with the kids during the day is probably more spent building relationships and then trying to put your stuff that you learn analytically on the ice in terms of systems, or with the penalty kill project that we did, just moving players in and out. And if they want to know why they're not killing penalties, then you just show them, listen, you touched the puck 15 times the first half of the semester, and you turned it over 12. So you're not going to be going out in the penalty kill anymore. And I think that kind of keeps the conversation pretty quick.
Speaking of quick conversations, or maybe not so quick, I'm going to keep with you two for a second, and then we'll come back to you, Kate. You know, there was some questions from the organizers around around this knowledge transfer of the benefit of analytics to your athletes. So how, and I have some final questions around why are we having a women's panel, et cetera, but what are some of the opportunities and challenges, or just your impressions about imparting the benefit of analytics to your athletes? And we know that, you know, empirically some athletes respond better, and how you package it. So just some of those challenges and opportunities in terms of actually working with the team in the analytics, above and beyond what you've already commented on. Do you have anything to comment yet? I'm just trying to tease out.
I just think getting as much information as possible, and they like analytics. It's just sometimes they don't like what the analytics are to them. But I mean, they all know what analytics, right? Everybody does. When you look down at your phone and it says 25%, you're like, okay, I got to get my phone charged. I mean, that's your phone. 25%, you got to get it charged. So it's not like they don't like analytics. It's just kind of trying to balance where you're going to put it into their lives, and whether they can, I don't want to use the term handle it, but whether they can absorb it and use it and allow them to be comfortable to continue to be the best players that they can be on the ice. We don't have trades. We don't call people up. Kids stay at St. Lawrence for 4 years. Kids stay at Clarkson for 4 years. You have to work with what you have, a lot like having your own kids. You know, you got about 7,000 things you want to tell them to do. Pick up your shoes, you know, clean your room, you know, do the dishes, pick your crap up, right? But at some point you got to figure out when to tell them that, so that stuff gets done, and then you're comfortable.
Want to ask that for the years? Okay.
I coach Brett, so she's used to this. She's obviously taken all the stuff that I didn't do and turned it into a couple of national championships.
There you go. Okay, so I'm going to turn back to Kate now. Kate, I just wanted you to comment on, again, some of the questions that came in from the organizers about this topic about analytics and innovation, and specifically, and many of you are MIT, Sloan people, so I always find it fascinating. This is a bit of a personal comment. Why are we still having this conversation? And that's broadly in the industry. But, you know, at Sloan this year, 3 owners got up and said, oh, I don't know if women can ever disrupt sport. I don't want to get into all of that, per se. But I just wanted to get your media, you know, first brush of history kind of perspective on what's happening around specifically analytics and stats in women's sports, and what are some of the industry challenges? I mean, and I would think that you're not, and you can play that however you want.
Oh, I talk about this a lot. I talk about it a lot, actually.
I'm glad I asked you.
Yeah. So, actually, to start, one of the industry challenges that we face when we're covering women's sports is just a lack of data. For example, the WNBA in the fall, there was an independent website that hosted a bunch of just independent data going back on the WNBA for 2 decades. And those independent researchers decided they were no longer going to do this, and they let it lapse. So that was a really big problem. Because a lot of, I honestly, like, you can't, go back 15 years and say, okay, so Brianna Stewart's debut looks like so-and-so's debut. You can't, and I believe some of that data was saved, luckily, but I don't think all of it was saved. In women's hockey, which this is a hockey conference, in women's hockey, for example, we have only so many years of data going back, and the CWHL right now is kind of in flux because they switched websites, and they were slowly adding data, backing up year after year, but I don't know if they've made it all the way back to their 10 years so far. I would have to check on that, something that I probably should check today. But overall, there's a lack of data. There's a lack of historical data, and currently, the data isn't always correct. So, for example, I've got a friend who he loves to race. His historical article is on the NWHL and CWHL, and every single Monday I would get a long email from him saying the NWHL changed their stats again, or I was looking at this and it turns out that that Kelly Babstock only had 15 shot attempts on Saturday, and they put that she had 22, and so I emailed them, and you don't necessarily know if the NWHL and CWHL have maybe different thresholds for what constitutes a shot attempt. But what would then happen is, that league would then oftentimes change the data in response to his email, which tells you that the people who are collecting the data in the first place might not, they're interns frequently, they're not always paid, they're not necessarily properly trained, they're doing the best they can, but the data is just a general perspective. If this can be changed going forward, in the future, making this broader, if women can, it's so difficult to say if this can be changed because you need people interested in the analytics before they're going to dump money into it. And you need more fans before they're going to dump money into it. Both leagues have done a good job, I think, of putting forth basic statistics, making that readily available. The CWHO is sending out stats reports for quite a while. After losing Ashley Stewart, who knows how that's going to go, but, good for her at least. So yeah, it's a lot of it is a question of money, a lot of it is a question of fan investment, and what is particularly interesting in the women's leagues, for hockey at least, is that fans aren't necessarily looking for stats right now. I'm sure that's going to change as the fan bases grow and develop, because right now it's just a small percentage of people who are really passionate about stats, and that's phenomenal. But overall, people are frequently looking more at which player interacted with me on Twitter. Who put up an Instagrammer for Cute Puppy, and that's terrific. That is a great way to grow a fan base. But you need those super duper hardcore fans who are looking to, they're grousing about, Chad Wiseman absolutely screwed up my team, my fantasy team, because he switched up the lines. Now my player's not getting enough time, blah, 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 blah. So you need those people who are looking at this as multiple modes of entertainment, and not just, something that they occasionally do on Saturdays. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot.
Thank you, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Thanks, Caitlin.
I just
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I think just given the time, I'll turn it over to Michael, and we'll do, that's what I mean, Q&A. Sure. Panelists? Do we just choose from Michael, or do you?
Yeah, we got
Two Democratic process. Ladies first, of course. jersey, eh? Very good.
This is for Brittany. Just you were mentioning shots. You track individual player shots and scoring chances, and you let them know if they roll it high relative to everybody else. Can you give an example of in a practice or when you're kind of coaching them of what you would tell them so that they would increase those scoring chances, or is that more of a team and systems based approach?
I'd say a little bit of both. You know, if you look at stats and someone has, you know, they're lower on their shots, but they're higher on the number of shots they're getting blocked, and you pull some video and look at, okay, how can we make it so that on your zone entries, you're opening up a lane to shoot, or when you're in the zone, you're getting to the net more. So I think it's a little bit of give and take, whether it's we're changing our offensive zone play a little bit, or whether it's individual needs to work on, you know, certain down low play in order to, you know, generate more for themselves or for their line mates. So a little bit of both.
Thank you.
So obviously everybody's talked about the fact that one of the big issues is just the time and the effort to calculate and collect the data. Have you, at the college level, have you looked at ways to integrate that into the academic side, right? So that you could have a regular class that part of a stats class or part of a whatever class does that tracking for you on a regular basis. Is there any way to kind of work that into the student population? These panels are growing every year. I mean, the comparison between this and 2 years ago is incredible, and they're all over the place. So there's interest there. I'm just wondering if we found any ways to kind of leverage that interest.
Yeah. They're sitting right there. There's a class right there. Ms. Jeremy, who presented earlier, was part of the shot tracking project that we did here the first half of the year. Dr. Shepherd did a class. Obviously, we'd love to do more. I mean, you know, again, we don't have a ton of time to implement what we'd love to do because we're not practicing at 10 a.m. and then everybody's going home. They have a full day. They're 18 to 22 years old, and as much as they love hockey, they love a lot of other things too, and they should. I mean, they're going to college, so we try to provide the best experience possible for kids that want to go to college. I mean, both programs are top 5 in the country. They're 10 miles apart. Everybody says they're in the middle of nowhere, but somebody's coming because we're top 5 teams in the country, and we try to provide an experience for both of them, both you know, our players to be able to play high-level hockey and still be able to go and be a college student. I think that's important, but these students have done a great job with the data they're able to get.
One more question, please.
Sorry, can you put your hand up?
Anybody else?
So this question is for the coaches. So obviously you track your own team in terms of like, you talk scoring chances, scoring against and stuff. Obviously it helps with deployment and that kind of thing, but I wonder if you also do, or maybe you don't have time, you would like to kind of do tracking of the other teams in your division to kind of, you know, get a better handle on who is a good player to target, who is a player you have to really keep an eye on, you know, any of that kind of, does any of that kind of stuff go on?
Yeah, we don't. We're both in the same league. We have 12 teams in our league, so we play each team twice. So in order to get, you know, enough data, you're gonna have to play teams more than that. So most of our, you know, pre-scout and stuff like that on the opponents is done just through video and not necessarily the actual statistics and analytics.
I think one of the things that keep going back to this project, I think it shows you how good it was. One of the games they did this year was against Yale, and we ended up playing Yale in the playoffs. So, you know, Dr. Shucker's for it on those numbers and the shot tracking thing. We didn't get to use a ton of it, but you know, we're just trying to get our teams prepared because we don't see opponents a lot. And we all know who the good players are, and you try to shut them down the best you can. Not as much as we like.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank Katie, Brittany, and Chris for being part of the panel this morning.
Excellent. I think a great start so far. We're going to have an abbreviated coffee break. We're going to try and come back maybe close to 11:25, so maybe 5 minutes later. There should be coffee and snacks outside. Also, students will be by their posters, so you can talk to them and hear more about the projects they've been doing.